Tired of dealing with annoying flies, fruit flies, and gnats in your home? The Zevo Flying Insect Trap is your ultimate solution. Don't wait. Check out the link in the video description now to get your Zevo Flying Insect Trap on Amazon and enjoy a bug-free home today.
The names are idyllic, evoking heaven on earth: Primrose Island, Crocus Island, Bluebell Island. But this uninhabited scatter of white sandy beaches and azure lagoons on the edge of the Indian Ocean is a crime scene in the most scandalous injustice ever inflicted on British troops by their own government. The Montebello Islands were the site of the initial British atomic bomb test, the first in a series throughout the Cold War that exposed more than 22,000 unsuspecting national servicemen to horrific radiation injuries, condemning thousands to lifelong sickness and agonizing deaths. Soldiers and sailors lined up on the decks of dozens of ships from the British and Australian navies to witness the blast from just a few miles away on October 3, 1952, during a top-secret exercise codenamed Operation Hurricane. "We had no protective clothing," former Royal Engineer Derek Hickman later recalled. "You wore shorts and sandals, and if you remembered to grab your bush hat on the way, that was all you had. They ordered us to turn our backs. We put our hands over our eyes, and they counted down over the tannoy. There was a sharp flash, and I could see the bones in my hands like an X-ray. Then the sound and the wind, and they told us to turn and face it." It's a story that shames our country, on a scale greater than even the post office or contaminated blood scandals. It's impossible to gauge how many lives across the generations have been affected, but estimates suggest the nuclear tests have resulted in birth defects and congenital health problems for tens of thousands of those men's children and grandchildren. Yet for more than 70 years, successive governments of all political stripes have refused to make more than the most dismissive acknowledgement of this self-inflicted catastrophe. And we all bear some responsibility, because we are all involved. Britain's nuclear capability has been the bedrock of our defense policy throughout most people's lifetimes. That first bomb contained 7 kilograms, about 15 pounds, of plutonium, and was stored in the hold of a 1,450-ton Navy frigate, HMS Plym. It lay at anchor off Trimawil Island, about 80 miles off the northwest coast of Australia, so remote that even today it takes 2 days to get there. The explosion unleashed a 600 miles per hour blast wave, a radioactive wind that reached the men, who had been at sea for 4 months, immediately after the roar of the detonation. All that was left of HMS Plym were a few fist-sized pieces of metal that fell like rain, said Derek, and the shape of the frigate scorched on the seabed. Reporters watched from a viewing tower a safer 55 miles away. They, too, heard the countdown, spoken by Welsh physicist Ewan Maddock, earning him the nickname, the Count of Montebello. The West Australian newspaper reported, the flash was followed by a huge expanding cloud which reached a height of 12,000 feet within about 3 minutes of the explosion. By that time it was about a mile across at its widest part. The news was greeted with jubilation in London. Despite the UK's close involvement with the US wartime Manhattan Project that developed the first atomic weapons, America had legislated in the 1946 McMahon Act to keep its nuclear technology to itself. And there was definitely no prospect of cooperation after one of the British atomic physicists, a German refugee called Klaus Fuchs, confessed to being a Soviet spy and giving the Kremlin the secret of how to process uranium. After that, the US refused even to provide a test site for British nuclear trials. Our success in building and exploding a bomb of our own, making Britain the world's third nuclear power after America and Russia, was hailed as a national triumph. Prime Minister Winston Churchill told the Commons, the weapon behaved exactly as expected. When the flash first burst through the hull of Plym, the temperature was nearly 1 million degrees. It is inconceivable that our military scientists did not realize the inevitable risks for those men who were taken across the world to witness that explosion and the blasts that followed over the next 6 years. The dangers of radiation, and the fact no amount of exposure was safe, were widely known. Indeed, that's what made it such a terrifying weapon. Most were young men in their teens or early 20s. Some were doing their compulsory 2 years of national service, others had signed on. All would have faced jail.